Well, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Derek's Travel Chats for March the 11th. Actually, episode number 30. Hard to believe, 30 shows, but here we are today. I'm your host, Derek Windsor, and also the owner of E&B Travel Services here in beautiful St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. Uh, to find out more information about how and when it would be good to travel, I invite you to visit my website, um, which I'll put up here on the screen. And you can drop me a line, send me an email, and we can set up a private consultation video call. Uh, Today is really a milestone when it comes to the pandemic, because it's been a year now since most of the world went in partial shutdown or full shutdown because of 19 and the borders had been restricted. So um, we're all thinking about travel and hoping to be able to get back at it very soon. However, this purpose of this show is designed to develop and share information about travel both during and post-pandemic. And you'll find a large variety of speakers and topics of information from previous episodes on my YouTube channel. And you can see him there and listen to what people had to say about where they're to and what different parts of the world are facing right now. And when you do visit the YouTube channel, I invite you to subscribe so you can stay in touch and keep up to date with new videos and information that's being posted. We're now entering a world where vaccines are being put into the arms of people on a daily basis, which gives us hope for something to look forward to and that the world will once again open up. And once that world opens up for travel, so many people will be wanting to take the vacation. And with millions of people wanting to travel, we know that there will be, in the near future, a possibility of maybe up to 2 years. The big issue with supply of airline seats will be lower, but then the demand we see will be higher because people want to get back doing what they love, traveling. Ladies and gentlemen, hopefully with this show, the time is now to plan for your next vacation. Secure your seat, secure your hotel, secure your cruise line or whatever you have on your bucket list. Now is the time to prepare. Today on our show, my guest is very familiar with preparing for travel. In fact, he's made his life all about travel and sharing his experiences and destinations around the world. My guest is both the host and executive producer of Raw Travel TV.
Hey guys, how you doing? Hey Derek.
Good, Rob. And so let me get back to a little bit about Rob. Rob Rose, as I said, he's the executive producer and the host of the show. The show premiered back in 2013, so they're now in their 8th season. And you can see it on over 170 local TV affiliates within the US and Canada on CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox, and it's in 90% of US notable international TV markets. So it also appears on National Geographic, Fox Liberia, and in Europe, Amazon India, and more episodes in many other places. And you can also see some episodes while you're flying on American Airlines, Delta, or Air Canada, Finnair, and many more. So I'd like to welcome Robert Rose to the show today as host and producer of Raw Travel TV. So welcome to Derek's Travel Chats, Robert. It's a pleasure to have you on board.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to talk to a human being, even through a computer. But
So how are things in New York City today?
they're getting better. I mean, the weather helps, right? So I'm going to go for a run later on. Once we get, I think, turn the corner and get into April, May. May in particular is usually a beautiful month, and we're cautiously optimistic. The vaccines, which are ahead of schedule in the U.S., thanks to good leadership that we now have. We are, hopefully turning the corner, and New York City is going to recover, and I hope come back stronger than ever, and people start picking up their dog poo again. We'll see, because they stopped. It looks like they've just given up everywhere. I'm like, either they got more dogs, and I think they got bigger too, and I'm like, or they just quit picking up after their dogs. I'm like, there's less people here, but there seems to be more dogs. So anyway, with the pandemic, I think it has been a challenging mentally for a lot of people, in particular for travelers. It's tough, man. I've kind of gotten used to staying here. I've been here since October, without actually leaving the city, except for like one night I went somewhere. But other than that, that's it. And that's the longest stretch that I've been in New York City without traveling in quite some time.
So, I mean, your whole career right now is based around your TV show, which, in order to have the TV show, you need to travel different places and get new content and so on. So, how has COVID really impacted you personally?
Well, we were lucky, because I was producing the show, for 8 seasons. And so season 1, I was always trying to play catch up, but we always had to, even before I began season 1, I had 8 in the can already. So you have to get ahead of production schedules, especially if you're a small independent production like ourselves. So I don't know, a couple, 3 years ago, I said, why am I doing this? It's not for the money. I do make a living at it, that's for sure. I could probably make more if I tried a little harder, but it's not the purpose. The purpose of the show is to inspire people to travel, to share the life-changing aspects of travel. And so, and just share what travel has meant to me and try to spread that to other people. Because I believe people who travel become better people. And so that's really the purpose. But if you're not enjoying the journey, what's the point, right? So there was a moment in time where I got so caught up in the business and the minutiae of putting a TV show together, which is incredibly intense, that I got just really sidetracked about, I thought maybe I'd just quit and just go travel. I said, well, let's try this. Let's go travel for travel's sake, film as you go along, no pressure, and just try a different approach. And so I didn't say no to any opportunities to travel. I started experimenting with some solo travel where I would film it myself. I'm not the best camera person, but I am getting better. And I picked up some skills along the way. And so it's like any skill. You have to practice it. It's a craft, and it's something I love. So because of that, when the pandemic hit, yes, we couldn't travel anymore, but I had such a backlog of content to ingest that I knew that we would be able, I thought we'd be cool till the end of the pandemic. I didn't realize at the time the pandemic was going to last this long. No. So now here we are, season 9 begins in September. We have edited all our content. I'm literally, as I like to joke, I've used every part of the buffalo. As my Native American friends like to say, I've cooked the hooves, and the horns are used for, the wardrobe, like everything that can be used without hurting the brand and disrespecting the viewer, because you always have some content like that, right? But all of that has been used. So what we've announced is, when I was thinking, I was like, well, I'll just dig into my library, show some reruns, freshen them up a little bit. But I really hate doing that because it's kind of like putting on sweatpants every day. You kind of have given up, So we all know what that's like during the pandemic. So I said, what's the one style of travel we know, regardless of what happens with the pandemic? that I can do. Solo travel in a van or an RV or a camper van, self-contained. Worst case scenario, I can do that because I have a friend who's been doing it the entire pandemic, God bless her, and I've been so jealous. I've been stuck in New York looking at dirty snow and dog poop, and she's out there having these wonderful experiences, outrunning the weather, outrunning COVID, you know, going to nature. So it's like worst case scenario, I can do that. Now with the vaccine, I think, you know, that road trip will have more human interaction, hopefully. Whatever's safe is what we'll do, you know. So public safety is always number one. My safety is number two. And that maybe I should flip flop it, but I don't. You know, I'm not. I take health seriously. I'm not one of these people. I don't smoke.
Basically, when you put your health at first, you're also putting public health at first because you're making sure that you're doing all the right things for yourself. So naturally that will just flow to the public. So
one would think, you know, there's a lot of people who don't care about their health, you know, but I'm like, that's cool for you. But when that gets interferes with me, that's a problem. You know, so, you know, I don't get into politics like libertarian or whatever. I'm pretty much live and let live no matter what. I don't think you can legislate morality, but I do believe if you think that putting a piece of fabric in front of your face is some kind of tyranny or infringement upon your liberty, while it not wearing one could potentially kill someone, you have your brain is something's wrong with your brain, you know? And so we've been polarized in the United States, probably much more so than you guys in Canada. I'm sure you've been able to keep up with it. So I'm hoping that this trip across the U.S. will do a couple of things. It'll, you know, obviously create content for the show, help the domestic travel industry kind of rebound a little bit, because I think that'll be the logical step: domestic, then regional, then international.
sure.
But you know, I could be wrong. And then simultaneously, you know, maybe help the nation. I mean, that's speaking too big for what the show can do, but help myself feel better about the nation I live in. Because right now I'm pretty cynical about it. I've always judged the United States more harshly than other nations because I expect more from my family. I expect more from myself and my own nation than I do from the rest of the world. And so when it falls short of that, I'm really disappointed. And right now I'm super disappointed. But I do know that the majority of people are good people. And I love getting out there and reminding myself and the viewers of that good people are like bad people. They're everywhere. And there's way more good people than bad. And, you know, there's a lot of complexity in between.
Yeah. And I mean, the United States, so many good people and such great scenery and some such a vast difference of kinds of scenery that you get to expect when you're going across there. So, and I know, Rob, people call you Rob or Robert because I've
well, both. I got shortened to Rob when I moved to New York 20 years ago. So go ahead.
I know you. A lot of your shows are shown in the United States and here in Canada. Maybe a lot of people may not be totally familiar with it. And we did have a thing queued up there. It seems to have disappeared, but maybe just a second to put that screen share up there, and we run your little trailer about your show, and
Sure.
and people can get an understanding of what you're all about.
Okay, you ready?
Here we go.
It feels great to be on the road again. Hello, greetings from Istanbul. What do you do?
A TV producer. Welcome to Georgia. Especially funk used to music for expression. Yeah, it's a language for people to express themselves. Stasia?
Sweet.
Robert. First time in Georgia, and I got to tell you, it's pretty amazing.
Meditation provokes people.
Just woke up in Jakarta. It's a major city. It's a little crazy down here. This is the first place I came to when I came to Kingston. We're in Ethiopia, and this is Raw Travel. I love Jakarta. Kind of hungry.
Are you ready to have your first bite of Georgian food?
It's the most delicious part. Is this where ska music began or reggae? Ska. Istanbul is the only city where you can actually be on two continents at the same time.
Oh my goodness, look who it is.
I find that people who travel, once they start, just want to keep going.
I hope that travel will always be there for me to act as a therapeutic way to handle this. I just implore you to please, if you have not traveled, if you do not have a passport, get one. Go somewhere, anywhere. Just begin. See if travel has the same impact on you that it had on me. It'll change everything about you.
No truer words that travel can have a big impact on you.
Right. Yeah, yeah. When I said those words, I was filming solo in Istanbul, Turkey. You know, what I thought I'd come through like some really difficult times, and travel worked its magic like it always did. It gives me perspective, smooths me out. It's been a challenge to live without it, and I know, like you said, as soon as people could travel again, whew, watch out, man. I may not ever come back home. I don't know. This is the biggest challenge to producing the shows. Like, I'm like, I don't want to go home and edit. I want to keep going. I want to keep traveling, you know?
So is that what got you in that love of travel and got you into becoming a TV host and producer?
For sure, being in front of the camera. I've been a producer for a while. I started off in ad sales and worked for Spanish language TV when I first moved to New York. I'm originally from Tennessee. And, you know, that was just a mind-blowing cultural, because at the time I had not been exposed to Latin culture. And so I met all these people from all these different countries from Latin America and just kind of fell in love with them. They were kind of like my second family here in New York. And quite frankly, I got along with Latinos in the U.S., in New York, than I did with, you know, other white dudes who went to Harvard, Yale. You know, in the business world, they were kind of sneaky, shady, stab me in the back kind of corporate animals. And the Latin people, not all, obviously, I'm speaking, you know, in generalities here.
Tongue in cheek.
I have a lot of white friends, just so you know. You know, having not been around that culture when I got involved in Latin culture, that made me want to go visit the places where these people were from. And so I just would start traveling, and my first trip was to Brazil. My first girlfriend in New York was Brazilian when I first got here, and her green card ran out, so she had to go back. So I had to go visit her, and that changed my life. And just over time, you just start doing more and more travel, and then you start wanting to do Asia and Europe, and you know, it's just grown over time. But the biggest thing happened when I sold that company. I left the Spanish TV space and started producing a Latin TV show as an executive producer, rarely, if ever, on camera. Never wanted to be on camera, but I lived abroad in Colombia for about a year, and traveled. My base was Colombia, but I traveled all over. I spent some time in Argentina, Peru, Trinidad and Tobago. Wherever there was a cheap airfare from Colombia is where I went. I would stay until I got bored, and then I'd go back. That changed everything. Everything. Living in another culture long-term, well, I consider long-term, 11 months, felt like 3 years. It changed everything, made a lot of friends, you know, immersed myself in the culture. Still don't speak Spanish fluently, but enough to get Tarzan Spanish to get by. And I just wanted to share that with people, because the U.S., I think, has less of good travel shows than Canada. And that may have changed now that we have so many more platforms now, but there's not a lot of great travel there, especially at the time when we started in 2013. All the travel shows focused on a famous chef, food, or lifestyles of the rich and famous, fantasy travel. And it did not reflect the travel that I was having, which was long-term, authentic cultural immersion, doing some volunteerism. You saw some music in mine. So it has a punk aesthetic. It has a punk rock aesthetic because that informs everything about who I am. I know I don't look it, but that does. And it kind of informs everything about how I've lived my life and my business, which is, I am not interested in doing what everyone else is interested in doing. If everyone's interested in doing it, I feel like there must be something wrong with it. And so I'm like, let's try an alternative approach. And so, I'm not an anarchist at all. As I told you, I believe in public health and safety and things like that. So if I am an anarchist, I'm the most law-abiding anarchist you've ever met. But I am at the same time rebellious in my approach to things. And so when I did the travel show, I knew that I had never been on TV, probably shouldn't put a face like this on TV. It should be criminal. But I was like, you know what? And I was stiff as a board when I did it. If you ever go back and see the first episodes, and I pretty much was like, I hate this. I hate being in front of the TV, worried about how you look and sound. But I got used to it. And the reason I did is I wanted it to be authentic. I didn't want it to be words written for someone else. And over the past 8 seasons, that has been one of the more fulfilling things, is being comfortable in front of the camera, writing the scripts. And I'm just trying to be as good as I can be, whatever that is. I'm not trying to be Anthony Bourdain. God rest his soul. He was a great influence, but I'm not trying to be Rick Steves. I love him as well. Yeah. I'm trying to be Robert Rose. And that's it. If you don't like it, don't watch it. But if you like it, cool. And if you don't, that's cool too.
And I feel no different, about what I'm doing here, to informing people. I want it to be my type of layout and show. Am I doing everything right or wrong? I'm sure there's all kinds of improvements that I'll make over a period of time. Yeah. And again, being in front of the camera, I've been in front of the camera for a good bit of my life doing different other things. So there was a comfort level there, but then from a technology standpoint is where the whole thing's right. So, I think there's an important message for all of these shows to be able to provide information to people. And, the show I saw you on was actually in Colombia. I forget all the full details of it now, but, it really was, I found it to be so unique in the way you were immersing yourself with the locals. And while I do some very structured tours, one of the things I like to do in mine is also, make sure that people get to meet local people, and may not be in the same way as what your show was doing, but like when I do a battlefield tour, they get to be in the small communities where the battlefields took place in France, those kinds of things, or if they're in Spain or wherever. That's where my travel, and I hope that this show is able to show people and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't think there is a wrong or right way to travel. I think there's only the right way for you. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get centered in the screen. There we go. It's the opposite of where, but like my mom travels differently than I did, than I do.
Sure. And
eventually, but I've taken tours because I wanted to see what that experience is like. So I did a yoga retreat in Iceland with, a tour provider. And it was mostly, some people might say, well, that's your motivation. It was mostly young women. I'd say middle-aged women, about my age, but there were some husbands along the way as well who were into yoga. And it was really less about the yoga. It's the setting that yoga was in. And that's where I think, you can find what interests you. I use punk rock as a metaphor. There's very few people that watch my show that are into punk rock. Sure. I know I have some of those fans that I've drawn from that, but the reason I incorporate it into the show is because there's a lesson to be learned from that music. And it's about living your life with some morals and some ethics and a line and it says, this is who I am. You know, people look to religion to do that a lot. And I think that's great. You know, but you can become an ideologue for anything, whether it be religion, music, whatever, you know. And so what I like about punk music is that it's an open-minded tolerance. So it fits really well with travel. And it's something that, because I love it so much, that when I travel, if I don't know anyone there, all I have to do is jump on Facebook, get into the punk community. I'm going to have friends like that.
Sure.
So if you're into knitting or whatever, you can do the same thing. But solo travels, tours, guided tours, none of them are really wrong. It's just different styles of traveling. And I think it depends on the destination, the individual, you know, as to what is going to be the best way to travel for you. I'm a lone wolf in life, so I like to solo travel, but I've done buddy road trips where I've gone with people. I've done tour, and I get something from all of them. I love them all. They all impact me in positive ways, but in different ways.
So if I were to ask you what destination had the biggest impact on you as an individual, how would you?
It would be really tough, but the most recent mind-blowing destination was definitely Ethiopia. And, you know, for you guys who know about Ethiopia, I know a lot of Canadians are way more traveled than most Americans, and that's starting to change than people from, I hate to say Americans because you guys are Americans, than most people from the United States. Yeah. But we're all Americans, right? Mexico too, by golly. So, you know, what North Americans even, if you want to take it that much further. But basically, the United States has been too insular for too long, and we're seeing the impact of that now. And so what I think is over the next generation or so, as people begin to travel, that'll start to break down a little bit because young people are traveling much differently. Like when I was in college, I had not been abroad. I didn't have a passport. And if you had a passport, you were sketchy. But now that I have a passport, I'm trying to up my game. So we finally went to Ethiopia, and I did go with a tour provider. And the reason I did is because he reached out to me, and I knew nothing about Ethiopia. I didn't want to do all the research because it's kind of a difficult country to go solo. And I'm so happy I did, because not only did it make my job of filming so much easier, there was internet blackouts for like 3 days because there was an attempted coup. So they shut down the internet for the whole country. And so it was a very challenging kind of filming environment. From a travel environment, I was kind of unaffected, other than I couldn't communicate back home. Sure. But the whole trip really did change me. But the part of the trip that changed me the most was visiting the tribes of southern Ethiopia, because I literally was hanging out with, you know, the Mercy, the Hammer tribe, and the Kado, 3 tribes. I got to see 3 of them, 3 very distinct cultures, some more westernized than others, but none of them by any means westernized. And the Mercy was our first one, and it was super hardcore. I saw how they lived. I mean, you see a guy, you know, it takes you hours to get there over horrible roads, and you're like, are we ever going to get there? And you're kind of slipping into some boredom, and the next thing you know, you see a completely naked guy with a machine gun waving you down, but with a huge smile on his face, you know? That's when you're like, oh, I think we're here, you know? And the machine guns are not for visitors, they're for cattle thieves, so you're cool. And, you know, they want you to buy lip plate. The women have lip plates and the earlobes, and they're grinding the corn. And this isn't something set up at Disneyland for visitors. This is real. Yeah. Man, will that be here in 100 years? I don't think so. 50, I don't know. So I felt blessed beyond belief to be able to not only go there, but to document it and come home with stuff from there. And if somebody doesn't understand the mind-blowing nature of that experience, you know, it's hard for me to relate to them, because I'm like, to me, that is wild. You know, I don't know if everybody appreciates it as much as I do. I know some people do, but I was just like, it still gives me chills. On the opposite end of the spectrum, in the United States, I've also been to Pine Ridge, South Dakota, which is a Native American, Lakota Sioux Native American reservation. And for those of you who don't know, it's the poorest county in the United States, average income around $3,000 a year. A lot of teen suicide, alcoholism. So the only images you see come from Pine Ridge are of despair and misery. And when I saw preteen suicide, I was like, man, if I ever get in that area, I want to film there and see if I could do a positive, uplifting story. And we did. And that was only 3 days, but that changed me a lot too. So it's those experiences with vastly different other cultures that really changed me the most. That's why I haven't been to Australia. I'm sure I'd have a great time. I'm sure it'd be mind blowing. It's a long ways to go to experience another culture very similar to my own with some very distinct, I would get off on the distinctions, but it's not like going to South Korea and eating an octopus that is so fresh that is still squiggling in there. Those type of experiences are like, that's what sticks in the brain until you're, I might end up in an old folks home, with dementia, but I guarantee those memories are going to be there somewhere stacked away because they're imprinted on the brain,
So how many countries have you visited, Rob?
Yeah, I saw in the questionnaire, and I get asked that a lot. So the last I counted was 72, but that was a long time ago. So I'm going to say 80-ish. I just need to sit down and count them up. And I kind of don't do it because if I didn't go back to places, I'd be well over 100, or maybe I could, try to go to every country in the world. But that's not my goal. There are some places you go to, and you're like, I'm glad I went, but I'll never go back. There are a few places that I don't think I've ever been anywhere. I'm like, I wish I had never gone there.
Yeah.
But there are some places that you go to that you just have to go back. And that's the way I feel about Colombia. I have friends there, certain places, and they're also easy to get to. So if I need a quick break, I go down there where I know the terrain and I know the people and I know what kind of experience I'm going to have, but I'm always going to learn something new as well. Every trip is different.
So to kind of conclude, you've had all of these experiences, and when you look back, prior to starting traveling around or getting into your show, and maybe even many years before that, how has traveling to all of these different countries and different experiences change your perspective on the world and on life?
I would say it's changed who I am. I'm always, when I go home to visit my mother and my family where I grew up, challenged, to be honest with you, especially, in the past year or so with the differences, and trying to bridge those differences because you don't ever want to outgrow your family. These are people you love, right? They brought you into this world. There's no such thing as doing that. And so I haven't, because you're always going to be family. But I have outgrown the 15 or 16 or 17 or 18-year-old kid I was when I was living there, last lived there, right? And, when I look back, I'm like, I'm not even the same person. I'm 5 people removed from that. But yet I am, yet there is a core of you that's still that kid who roamed the farm and fished and all that stuff. So, believe it or not, those trips home are kind of the most emotional for me because it's like I'm not aware of the changes going on until I go there, and then I see them, feel them, and they're good changes. I wouldn't give them back for anything, but also I don't know. I kind of lead depressed, sometimes too. So it's like it's a mixed bag, because you want, and that's one of the things I want everyone to be along for this, and we all change and we all grow, right?
Sure.
Being static doesn't exist. You're either dying or you're living.
Sure.
But some live more than others, and I want my life to live as much as I can, where when I get to the end, I'll be like, well, I wish I had another 30 years or 50 years or another lifetime, and who knows, maybe I will, but at least I gave this one all I could. And I did as much good as I could for the people coming up behind me so that maybe the world's a little better today than it was when I came into it. It's simple, It's a lot to ask on a planet of 7 billion people, but it's a good thing to strive for,
Well, I think we all, I think there's some real truth to that as far as expanding yourself but keeping yourself at your core, going back to your roots and understanding how, I guess, you've branched out and grown those other branches to your life and to your thoughts and patterns And so
And without that foundation, I want to be clear, I wouldn't be the person I am. Like my mom is one of the sweetest women I've ever met, and her mother was too. My grandmother, the most big-hearted person I've ever met, who judged people, didn't judge people. Was in it, and that's not something you can say about the American South. It's a lot of judgment going on down there, but there's also a lot of good people down there. And so it's kind of like meshing those two cultures. And if I wasn't a traveler, I'd try to probably study to be an anthropologist, and I could break it down more scientifically.
Yeah.
But I love where I'm from, and I love the background I had, and that's why I'll probably end up dying there, full circle. If I'm not, if I get to call the shots when and where I get to die, I get to do that. Most of us don't. So we'll see.
If you ever had the opportunity to come to Newfoundland and Labrador, I'm sure you will find a whole different culture as well.
Oh yeah,
and,
I'd like to.
But you'll see a lot of similarities in that anyone from Newfoundland and Labrador, if you're from there, no matter where you go, Newfoundland and Labrador is always home, and the people. So
I love Canadians, man. I'm not just saying that for the audience, man. I've been to Quebec, Montreal, Quebec City, of course, the big three, I guess, on this side. And just had nothing but matter of fact, my cameraman and I had a joke. We're like, is everybody just nice? Or, we're New York. We're kind of hardball New Yorkers at this point. My cameraman is born and raised here. We're like, there's not a a-hole in the whole country. And we're like, all right, our mission is to try to find one on this shoot. And we finally found one, but it took about 8 days. And it was hard. So God bless you, man. It would take me 8 minutes to find one in New York. Not even that long, So I just think you guys are, unfailingly polite and nice. And I kind of came from that, from the American South. It's not like that anymore. And that hurts me. It hurts me. The bitterness and the hatred is just, it's palpable. And, I want to see that go away. I want us to all get along better. But I think, I would love to come to Newfoundland because I've never been there. And, look, going all the way across the planet in Australia, I want to go there. But, like, is it worth the trip? Well, I'm like, Indonesia. I'd rather go to Indonesia because it's right there. And there I'm going to have a wow experience. Yeah. But Newfoundland and Canada, we're all on this continent together. I'm like, that's just a hop, skip, and a jump. I'll do that. That's easy.
Senior from New York, and we're making those comparisons. It would be not right of me to also promote the fact that on Broadway in New York, it is the Broadway musical called "Come From Away." I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I know it. Yeah, what it's about. Yeah, for sure.
Newfoundland and Gander, and what happened during, I can't say 9/11 because it all happened on 9/12. It was the day afterwards. So that all of this took place. So I encourage anyone when you're in New York to get tickets to Come From Away, to see a story that about humanity and goodness that needs to be shared around the world. So, Robert, thank you very much for being part of the show today. It was a pleasure to have you on, and I will get your webpage put up as well, so people follow your TV show and look it up on local TV stations, and hopefully, learn a lot of what comes from your show as well.
Yeah, email your cable providers up there and tell them, why aren't you running this show? I don't know why we're not internationally. We haven't been picked up in Canada, so you guys could see, on a more regular basis. But hopefully someday we'll be on some kind of pan-regional network. You had mentioned Nat Geo. That's in Asia, just so everybody knows. So don't go looking for it on Nat Geo. And that was some time ago. But yeah, in the meantime, try to catch it over the air and go to our website. And thank you for having me on, Derek. It's been a pleasure.
Again, thank you very much. And next week we will have 4 guests on who are travelers themselves, and they're going to talk about their story and what it's meant to them not to be able to travel over the last, close to 18 months for them since they've been able to travel. So I look forward to having people view again next week, same time, and everyone have a great afternoon.